I am 21 years old, and I spent this summer working at a children's camp in the woods where the rules were not meant to keep us safe from lawsuits. They were meant to keep us alive. My name is Paul, and I should have listened to the warnings before I signed that contract. I should have questioned why Camp Pine Haven paid triple the rate of any other summer camp in Oregon. I should have wondered why they had 5 counselor positions open just 2 weeks before the season started. But student loans do not pay themselves, and desperation makes people ignore red flags the size of highway billboards. The camp sat deep in the Cascade Range, 3 hours from the nearest town called Millbrook, a place so small it barely registered on GPS. The road leading to Pine Haven twisted through old-growth forest where the trees grew so thick that sunlight struggled to reach the ground even at noon. Douglas firs towered overhead like ancient sentinels, their branches interweaving into a canopy that seemed to swallow sound itself. I arrived on May 15th at 2:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because my phone lost signal the moment I passed beneath the wooden arch bearing the camp's name, and the clock froze at that moment. It would not update again until I left. The main office was a log cabin that smelled of pine and something else, something organic and old, like mushrooms growing in dark places. Behind the desk sat Director Margaret Shoreham, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. Her eyes were the pale blue of a winter sky, and they never seemed to blink. "You are Paul," she said, not a question. "Sit down. We have much to discuss before the others arrive." I sat in a chair that creaked under my weight. The office walls were covered in photographs from previous summers, children smiling, counselors leading activities, campfires glowing in the twilight. Normal camp photos, except in every single picture, if you looked carefully, the tree line in the background was blurred, as if something had been moving too fast for the camera to capture. Director Shoreham slid a manila folder across the desk. "Your contract. Sign the last page. But first you will read this." She produced a laminated sheet of paper from her desk drawer and placed it in front of me. "Most camps have rules for the children," she said, her voice flat and rehearsed, as if she had given this speech many times. "We have rules for the staff. You will memorize these. You will follow them exactly. No exceptions. No questions." 3 counselors lost their positions last summer for failing to comply. "Lost their positions?" I asked. "You mean they were fired?" Director Shoreham's expression did not change. "I mean they lost their positions." The distinction felt important, though I could not articulate why. I looked down at the laminated sheet. Camp Pine Haven Counselor Rules. Never go into the woods alone. If you must enter the forest beyond the marked trail for any reason, take at least 2 other staff members. 3 is safe. 2 is risky. 1 is fatal. Between the hours of 11 p.m. and 5 a.m., all staff must remain inside the main lodge or their assigned cabins. If you hear someone calling your name after 11 p.m., it is not who you think it is. Do not answer. Do not open your door. The children must never swim in the lake after 6 p.m. No exceptions. If a child claims they lost something in the water after this time, it is already gone. Do not attempt to retrieve it. If you see a cabin that is not on your map, do not approach it. Do not look through its windows. Do not acknowledge its existence to the children. Mark its location and report it to the director immediately. The old well behind the recreation hall is off limits to everyone. It has been sealed. If you notice the seal is broken, leave the area immediately and find the director. Do not look inside. Do not listen for echoes. If a child tells you they have made a new friend in the woods who does not attend the camp, inform the director at once. Do not ask the child for details about this friend. Do not tell the child that their friend is not real. The campfire circle must be swept clear of leaves and debris before every use. Inspect the stone border carefully. If you find small bones arranged in patterns, cancel the campfire and report to the director. Animal sounds are normal in the forest. If you hear something that sounds almost like an animal but not quite right, get the children inside immediately. Do not try to identify what you heard. All camp buildings have red doors. If you encounter a door that is not red, do not open it. If you find yourself in a room you do not remember entering, do not turn around. Walk forward until you find an exit. 10. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it is wrong. If a child seems off in a way you cannot explain, watch them carefully and report anything unusual. If another counselor starts breaking these rules, keep your distance. I read through the list 3 times, my mouth going drier with each pass. This is a joke, right? Some kind of hazing for new counselors? Director Shoreham finally blinked, once slowly. Do you find it amusing? No, these rules are necessary. She leaned forward, and for the first time I saw something in those pale eyes. Fear, exhaustion. I have been directing this camp for 32 years, Paul. Before me, my mother ran it for 27 years. The rules have been refined over time, but their core has remained unchanged since 1947 when the camp was founded. They exist because people learned the hard way what happens when you ignore them. What happens? I whispered. She sat back. Nothing good. You will meet your fellow counselors tonight. They arrived yesterday. Jeremy, Tyler, Max, and David. Jeremy is returning for his 3rd summer, so if you have questions, he can answer some of them. The children arrive tomorrow at 10 a.m. 43 campers, ages 7 to 13, staying for 8 weeks. Your primary job is to keep them safe and entertained. Your secondary job is to follow the rules, and if I want to leave, you can leave anytime. She gestured to the door. The road is right there. But you signed a contract. You will lose your deposit, and you will not receive any pay for incomplete work. Also, she paused, choosing her words carefully. It is better to finish the summer. People who leave early sometimes find the drive back difficult. The way she said difficult made my skin prickle. I signed the contract. I needed the money, and part of me, the stupid, stubborn part, thought maybe this was all an elaborate act. Some quirky camp tradition to build camaraderie through shared absurdity. I would learn otherwise. The counselor cabins were small wooden structures arranged in a semicircle behind the main lodge. Each housed 2 people in bunk beds that had probably been old in the 1970s. My roommate was David, a lanky guy from Seattle with nervous energy and a habit of cracking his knuckles. You read the rules yet? He asked as I unpacked my duffel bag. Yeah, they are something. I thought Jeremy was messing with me when he showed me his copy yesterday. David laughed, but it sounded forced. But the director had the same list. Word for word. She was serious about it too. Have you seen anything weird yet? Nah, we only got here yesterday afternoon. Spent most of today setting up the activity stations and safety checking the equipment. Normal camp stuff. He paused. Well, mostly normal. Tyler said he heard something in the woods last night around midnight, like footsteps circling the cabin. But it was probably just a deer. Probably, I agreed, remembering Rule 2, do not answer. Do not open your door. We met the others at dinner in the main lodge, a large building with exposed beam ceiling and enough tables to seat 100 people. The kitchen staff had not arrived yet, so we were on our own for meals until tomorrow. Jeremy, Tyler, and Max were already eating sandwiches when David and I arrived. Jeremy was exactly what you would expect from a 3-year camp veteran. Confident, athletic, with sun-bleached hair and an easy smile that probably made parents trust him instantly. But when he looked at me, really looked at me, I saw something harder underneath, something watchful. Fresh meat, he said, raising his soda in mock toast. Welcome to Pine Haven, Paul. I am Jeremy, returning counselor and unofficial survival expert. Survival expert? I sat down across from him. You will understand by August. He gestured to the others. Tyler is the tall one trying to grow a beard. Spoiler alert, it is not working. Max is the quiet one who is probably smarter than all of us combined. David you have met. Tyler, who was indeed tall and sporting patchy facial hair, flipped Jeremy off good-naturedly. Max, a stocky guy with dark hair and glasses, just nodded at me without smiling. So, I said, pulling out my own sandwich, are we going to talk about the rules? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 5 degrees. Jeremy stopped smiling. What about them? He asked carefully. Are they real? I mean, come on. Do not look in certain cabins. Bones around the campfire. It reads like a creepypasta. It reads like a survival manual, Jeremy said flatly. And yeah, they are real. Every single one of them. How do you know? He was quiet for a long moment, then pushed up his left sleeve. A jagged scar ran from his wrist to his elbow, pale and ropey against his tanned skin. Summer before last, I got cocky. Thought I knew the woods well enough to take a shortcut back from the lake by myself. It was late afternoon, still plenty of light. I was not even that far from camp, maybe a quarter mile. That is when I heard it. Heard what? David asked, leaning forward despite himself. My name. Crystal clear. It sounded exactly like Director Shoram's voice, like she was calling me back for dinner. So I followed it. Kept thinking I was about to see her through the trees, but I never did. The voice kept moving, always just out of sight. After maybe 10 minutes, I realized the sun was setting and I had no idea where I was. The voice had led me deep into the forest, way off any trail. Jeremy's hand unconsciously moved to his scarred arm. That is when I saw it. Standing between two trees, maybe 30 feet away, it looked like the director. Same gray hair, same clothes. But it was too tall, maybe 7 feet. And its proportions were wrong. Arms too long, head too narrow. It smiled at me and its mouth opened way too wide, and it said in her voice, "Jeremy, come here. We need you." The lodge was completely silent except for the wind moving through the trees outside. I ran. Did not matter what direction, just ran as fast as I could. I could hear it behind me, not running but moving fast, branches breaking. I tripped over a root and went down hard, hit something sharp. Tore my arm open. He touched the scar again. But when I fell, I rolled down a slope and ended up on one of the marked trails. The second I crossed onto that trail, the sounds behind me stopped. Complete silence. I looked back and there was nothing there. Just trees. Jesus, Tyler breathed. I made it back to camp just before dark. Director Shoram took one look at my arm, cleaned it up, and said 3 words. Remember the rules. That was it. No questions about how it happened. She knew. Jeremy looked at each of us in turn. So yeah, the rules are real. Follow them exactly and you will probably be fine. Probably. What happened to the other counselors? I asked. The director said 3 people lost their positions last summer. Jeremy's jaw tightened. 2 of them left mid-season. Packed up one night and drove away. The third one, he shook his head. We do not talk about the third one. You will meet someone tomorrow who can tell you more if you really want to know. But trust me, you do not want to know. We finished our meal in uncomfortable silence. When I returned to the cabin with David that night, I pulled out the laminated rule sheet and read it again by flashlight. Every word felt heavier now, weighted with meaning I was only beginning to understand. At 11:47 p.m., I was lying in my bunk trying to sleep when I heard it. Paul. My voice. Calling from outside the cabin. Calling my own name in my own voice. Paul, I need help. I am locked out. David was snoring softly in the bunk below me. I lay frozen, barely breathing as my voice continued calling from the darkness outside. It sounded perfectly natural. No distortion, no obvious wrongness. If I had not read Rule 2, I would have opened the door without hesitation. Paul, please. It is cold out here. The door handle rattled. Once, twice, then stopped. I did not move until I heard footsteps moving away from the cabin, leaves crunching in a slow circle around the structure. The footsteps were too heavy to be human. They continued for almost 20 minutes before finally fading into the distance. I did not sleep that night. The children arrived at 10:14 a.m. in 3 yellow buses that looked ancient enough to be fire hazards. They poured out in a chaos of backpacks, sleeping bags, and excited chatter. 43 kids ranging from tiny 7-year-olds to gangly 13-year-olds trying to look too cool for camp. Under Director Shoram's efficient organization, we got everyone sorted into cabin groups and settled within 2 hours. I was assigned to Cabin 7, 6 boys aged 9 to 11. They seemed like good kids, energetic but not malicious. One of them, a small 9-year-old named Christopher, barely spoke and stayed close to my side during the tour. The camp layout was straightforward. Main lodge in the center, counselor cabins behind it, camper cabins forming a large circle around the communal area, and various activity stations spread throughout the cleared grounds. The lake sat to the east, down a gentle slope. The woods pressed in from all sides, held back by a perimeter of orange-painted stakes that marked the boundary between safe and do not cross. Jeremy gathered all the counselors at 2 p.m., while the kids had free time in the recreation hall. Okay, listen up, he said, his usual easy demeanor replaced by something more serious. You have read the rules. Now I am going to tell you what they really mean, the stuff the director will not say outright. We huddled close, and Jeremy continued. Rule 1 is absolute. Never be alone in the woods. Whatever's out there hunts solitary people. It does not like groups. 2 is the minimum. But 3 is better because if one of you gets grabbed, the other 2 can pull them back. Grabbed? Max repeated quietly. It happens fast. You will be walking and suddenly someone is not there anymore. They do not even have time to scream usually. That is why you keep eyes on each other constantly when you are beyond the stakes. He moved on. Rule 2. The voices after 11 p.m. They are testing the doors every night. They sound like people you know. They will say things only those people would say. Do not believe them. I have heard my dead brother's voice out there. Tyler has heard his mom. They know things they should not know. Just stay inside and ignore them. Tyler was pale, his hand shaking slightly. This was clearly news to him. Rule 3 about the lake. Something lives in there. We do not know what, but it only comes out after 6 p.m. Before that, the lake is fine. We test it every year. But when the sun starts to set, you get everyone out of the water. Do not debate with kids who want to stay in longer. You drag them out if you have to. What is in the lake? I asked. Jeremy shrugged. Nobody who has stayed to find out has come back to tell us. There are stories from before the camp was established. Old local legends about the lake. The closest town, Millbrook, used to be bigger. Used to have a community of about 200 people. Now there are maybe 30 people living there. And they do not talk about the lake. Ever. He continued through each rule, adding context and warnings. The cabin that is not on your map appears in different locations. Sometimes it is near the lake, sometimes deep in the woods, sometimes right at the edge of camp. It looks old, abandoned, but if you look through the windows you might see lights inside, might see movement. The director will check the location you report and add it to the map she keeps in her office. She has dozens of maps, each with different cabins marked. The old well behind the recreation hall used to have a wooden cover. Now it has a steel seal bolted into concrete. Every summer, something tries to open it. If you find it open, run. Do not ask why. Just run and find the director. Rule 6, Jeremy said, and his voice dropped even lower. This one is the most important. If a kid says they have a friend in the woods, you tell the director immediately. No delay. Do not ask the kid what the friend looks like. Do not ask what the friend says to them. Because whatever it is trying to lure the kid away from camp, and it is patient. It will spend days building trust. What happens if... Max started. 4 years ago, before I started, a little girl made a friend in the woods. Her counselor thought she was just lonely and had an imaginary friend. Normal kid stuff. One night, the girl walked out of her cabin at 3 a.m. and headed into the forest. They found her 3 days later 2 miles from camp, sitting at the base of a tree. She was alive, but she would not speak, would not acknowledge anyone. She just sat there staring into the woods. They took her to a hospital, and as far as I know, she is still there. Still sitting. Still staring. The silence that followed was suffocating. Questions? Jeremy asked. Yeah, Tyler said. Why the hell do we stay here? Why does this camp keep operating? Jeremy looked at him for a long moment. Because the alternative is worse. The things in these woods are contained here. Pinehaven has an agreement, I guess you could call it. As long as we follow the rules, as long as we respect the boundaries, the things stay here. They do not go to Millbrook. They do not follow people home, usually. Usually? David's voice cracked. Follow the rules, Jeremy repeated. Just follow the rules. The first week passed in a blur of normal camp activities. Swimming lessons in the lake, always ending by 5:30 p.m. to give us buffer time before the 6 p.m. deadline. Hiking on the marked trails, always in groups of at least 5. 3 counselors and however many kids. Arts and crafts, campfire songs, s'mores, and the kind of wholesome fun that belonged in summer camp brochures. And every night, the voices. They came without fail after 11 p.m. Sometimes they called our names. Sometimes they had conversations with each other, talking in voices that belonged to our families and friends. They would argue, laugh, cry, anything to get us to open the doors. The first time I heard my mother's voice outside the cabin, sobbing and begging me to let her in because something was chasing her, I nearly broke. My hand was on the doorknob before David grabbed my wrist. It is not her, he hissed. Your mom is in California. That is not her. He was right, but it sounded so real. We learned to sleep through it, more or less. Some nights were worse than others. The kids heard it too. Often woke up scared, asking about the voices. We told them it was animals, echoes in the woods, anything but the truth. Somehow they believed us. Children are resilient that way, able to accept explanations that adults would question. Christopher, the quiet kid from my cabin, was the exception. He never seemed scared by the voices. When the others huddled in their bunks, he would sit by the window, watching the darkness outside with an expression I could not read. On the 8th night, he spoke to me. "They are looking for someone." I was doing bed checks, making sure everyone was tucked in. "What do you mean, buddy?" The voices. "They are calling different names every night. They are looking for someone specific." He turned from the window to look at me. "They have not found them yet." "How do you know that?" "Because they are still looking." The certainty in his voice chilled me more than the voices themselves. The next morning, during breakfast, one of the girls from Cabin 3 approached Director Shoreham. I was close enough to hear the conversation. "Ma'am, I made a new friend yesterday." I felt my stomach drop. Director Shoreham went very still. "Tell me about your friend," she said calmly. "I met her at the edge of the woods during free time. She is really nice. She said she lives near here and comes to watch the camp sometimes. She asked if I wanted to play with her tonight after the campfire." "What is your name?" the director asked. "Emma." "Emma, I am very proud of you for telling me about your friend. You did exactly the right thing." She turned to scan the room and caught my eye. "Paul, please come here." I approached quickly. Director Shoreham put a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "Emma, I need you to listen very carefully. Your friend is not a real person. She is something that lives in the woods, and she is trying to trick you. You must never go into the woods with her. You must never speak to her again. Do you understand?" Emma's eyes went wide. "But she seemed so nice. She knew my name. She knew about my dog at home. That is how it tricks children. It learns things about you and pretends to be your friend. But it is not your friend, Emma. It wants to take you away from camp, and if it does, we will not be able to find you." Tears welled in Emma's eyes. She nodded silently. "Who is your counselor?" Director Shoreham asked. "Miss Sarah. Go find Miss Sarah and stay close to her today. And Emma, if you see your friend again, you run the other way and tell an adult immediately." "Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am." After Emma left, the director turned to me. "Increase supervision at the forest perimeter. No child gets within 10 feet of the stakes without a counselor watching them directly. Pass the word to Jeremy and the others." "Should we tell the kids about what is out there?" I asked. "They would not believe you. Their minds would rationalize it as games or stories. Better to watch them closely and intervene when necessary." She paused. "This happens every summer. Something always tries to lure a child away. We have never lost one on my watch, and I do not intend to start." That afternoon, we doubled up on supervision. During free time, the counselors positioned ourselves around the perimeter, keeping the kids to the center of camp. I was stationed near the northern edge when I saw Christopher approach the stakes. He stood just inside the boundary, staring into the woods. "Chris, buddy, come back toward the center," I called. He did not move. I walked over and put a hand on his shoulder. "Chris, you need to... Do you see it?" he whispered. I looked where he was staring. At first, I saw nothing but trees and shadows. Then my eyes adjusted and I realized one of the shadows was wrong. It was too dark, too solid, and it was shaped like a person. It stood about 40 feet into the woods, perfectly still. As I watched, it raised one arm, two long joints bending wrong, and waved at us. "Chris, we are leaving now." I pulled him backward, away from the stakes. "It wants to show me something," Chris said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "It has been calling me at night. It says I am special. It says I can see things other people cannot." My blood turned to ice. "How long has it been calling you?" "Since the first night." "Did you answer it?" "No. The rules say not to." He looked up at me with those unsettling, too aware eyes. "But I have been listening." I brought Christopher directly to Director Shoreham, who listened to my report with grim but unsurprised acceptance. "Christopher, I need you to stay in the main lodge with me for the rest of the day," she told him. "Can you do that?" He nodded. After he left with one of the kitchen staff, the director turned to me. "Whatever has marked him, it will not stop. It will try every night to get him to come outside. I will move him to a cabin closer to the main lodge where I can watch personally." "Marked him?" I repeated. "Some children are sensitive. They can see things, sense things. It makes them targets. Christopher is the third sensitive child we have had in 5 years." She saw my expression. The other two made it through the summer safely. We increased their supervision and kept them close. But it is exhausting for everyone involved. "What happens if..." "We do not talk about worst-case scenarios," she cut me off. We prevent them. June became July. The routines of camp continued: swimming, hiking, crafts, games, but tension simmered underneath everything. Christopher was moved to Cabin 1, directly across from the main lodge, and Director Shoreham personally checked on him multiple times per night. The thing in the woods was persistent. It called his name every single night in different voices. His mother, his father, his dead grandmother, even my voice. The scariest part was watching Christopher's resistance slowly erode. He stopped eating much. He stared into space during activities. When he did speak, it was to tell us what the voice had said, what it had promised to show him. "It says there is a place in the woods where time does not work right," he told me on a Tuesday morning. "It says if I go there I can see my grandmother again. The real her, not just memories." "Your grandmother has passed?" I asked gently. He nodded. "Last year. I miss her a lot." "Chris, that thing is lying to you. It does not have your grandmother. It is just using your feelings to manipulate you." "I know," he whispered. "But what if it is not lying? What if I could see her one more time?" I had no answer to that. How do you argue with a grieving child who is being offered exactly what he wants most? On July 15th, everything changed. It was a Tuesday, clear and hot. We had scheduled a long hike on one of the main trails, all the kids together with 6 counselors spread throughout the group. Jeremy led the front, I was in the middle, and Max brought up the rear. We were about a mile from camp when one of the boys shouted, "Look, there is a cabin over there!" Through the trees, maybe 50 yards off the trail, I saw it. A small wooden structure, old and weathered, with dark windows and a door that hung slightly open. Rule 4. If you see a cabin that is not on your map, do not approach it. "That is just an old maintenance shed," Jeremy called back, his voice carefully casual. "Nothing interesting. Keep moving, guys," but the damage was done. The kids were curious now, craning their necks to see the cabin as we passed. Most lost interest within a few minutes, but I noticed Christopher had stopped walking. He was staring at the cabin with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Chris, let us go," I said, taking his hand. He pointed at the cabin. "There is someone in there." I looked. The windows were dark, reflecting nothing but trees. "There is no one there, buddy." "It is abandoned. There is someone in there," he repeated. "And they are waving at me." I pulled him away from the sight line, back toward the moving group. "We need to keep up with the others." He came reluctantly, looking back over his shoulder every few steps. When we returned to camp, I reported the cabin's location to Director Shoreham, who marked it on her map with a red X. It was the 7th cabin marked this summer. That night, Christopher disappeared. I discovered it during my 2 a.m. bed check. His bunk was empty, blankets thrown back. The cabin door was unlocked and hanging open. I immediately raised the alarm, and within minutes all the counselors were assembled in the main lodge. "How long has he been gone?" Director Shoreham demanded. I checked at midnight and he was in bed. "So less than 2 hours," I said, my voice shaking. "I am sorry, I should have—" "No time for that," she turned to Jeremy. "Groups of 3, standard search pattern. Stay on the marked trails. You have flashlights, whistles, and radios. If you find him, do not approach any structures and do not follow him if he runs into unmarked woods. Radio immediately and wait for backup." We split up. Jeremy, Tyler, and I took the northern trails. David, Max, and Sarah took the eastern paths toward the lake. Director Shoreham stayed at camp with the remaining counselors to keep watch on the other kids. The woods at night were a different world. Our flashlights carved narrow tunnels through darkness so complete it felt solid. Every sound was amplified. Branches creaking, leaves rustling, our own breathing harsh and loud. And underneath it all, barely audible, the sound of footsteps that were not ours. "Christopher," we called. "Chris, if you can hear us, follow my voice back to the trail." No answer. Just the woods, watching and waiting. We had been searching for 45 minutes when Tyler grabbed my arm. "Listen," in the distance so faint I almost missed it, singing. A child's voice, clear and sweet, singing a song I did not recognize. The melody was wrong somehow. The intervals between notes just slightly off. "That is not Christopher," Jeremy said quietly. "Chris does not sing. Keep moving." We followed the trail north, sweeping our flashlights through the trees. That is when I saw it, a small figure in pajamas standing just beyond the orange stakes, barely visible in the darkness. "There," I shouted, running toward the perimeter. Jeremy yanked me back hard. "Look closer," I focused my flashlight beam. The figure was child-sized, wearing what looked like pajamas. But it was not moving, was not breathing. And when the light hit it fully, I saw that its proportions were wrong. Legs too long, arms hanging too low, head tilted at an angle that should have been painful. As we watched, it turned to look at us. Its face was smooth and featureless except for a mouth that opened too wide, revealing nothing but darkness inside. It raised one hand and waved, the gesture exactly like what I had seen that day at the perimeter with Christopher. Then it turned and walked deeper into the woods, moving with an odd, jerking gait like a marionette operated by an amateur puppeteer. "What the hell was that?" Tyler breathed. "A lure," Jeremy said, trying to get us to follow. "We keep searching, but we stay on the trails." We radioed our sighting to Director Shoreham and continued the search. An hour later, David's group found Christopher. He was sitting on the trail near the lake, staring at the water. He was unharmed, not even dirty, as if he had simply walked out of his cabin and sat down. When David approached, Christopher did not react. "Christopher," David said carefully. "Are you okay?" "She showed me," Christopher whispered. "My grandmother. I saw her." "Chris, that was not your grandmother. That was something else, something dangerous. It looked like her. It sounded like her. She told me she missed me. She told me," his voice cracked. "She told me she was sorry for leaving me." David wrapped Christopher in a blanket and called for pickup. We brought him back to camp where Director Shoreham was waiting. She took him into her office for a private conversation that lasted over an hour. When they emerged, Christopher looked exhausted but more present than he had been in weeks. Director Shoreham gathered all the counselors in the lodge after the kids were back in bed. "Christopher has agreed to stay in my personal quarters for the remainder of the summer," she said. "What he encountered in the woods tonight scared him badly enough that he no longer wants to go back." "That is good. Fear will keep him safe." "What did he encounter?" I asked. "He said he saw his grandmother. He saw something wearing his grandmother's appearance. It spoke to him. It made promises. It tried to lead him to the cabin you saw on the trail earlier today." She paused. "Christopher is a strong child. When the thing reached out to take his hand, he refused. He said the rules told him not to go into the woods alone, and even though he wanted to see his grandmother, he knew it was wrong. So he turned and walked back toward camp. The thing followed him to the trail's edge but could not cross onto the marked path. It stood there watching him until our search teams arrived." "So the trails are safe?" Tyler asked. "Safer. Nothing is entirely safe here. But yes, the marked trails have protections. As long as you stay on them, you have a better chance." She looked at each of us. "Christopher's experience is a warning. These things are getting bolder, more aggressive. We need to increase vigilance for the rest of the summer." "Why are they getting bolder?" Max asked. It was one of the first times I had heard him speak up in a group. Director Shoreham was quiet for a long moment. "Because it has been 78 years since the agreement was made. And every year, the boundaries weaken a little more." "What agreement?" I demanded. "The one that keeps them in these woods instead of spreading into the world beyond?" She stood up. "That is all you need to know. Get some rest. Tomorrow we have 42 children who need to believe they are at a normal summer camp." July passed into August. The incident with Christopher had shaken all of us, but we fell back into routines because the alternative was falling apart. The kids sensed our tension but seemed to interpret it as normal adult stress. They played, they learned, they made friendships that would probably last their whole lives, and every night the things in the woods called to us. I started having dreams. In them, I would wake up in my bunk and hear David calling me from outside. I would walk to the door, open it, and step out into a forest that was not quite right. Trees growing at impossible angles. The sky a color that had no name. And standing in a clearing would be everyone I had ever lost. My grandfather, my childhood dog, a girl I had dated in high school who died in a car accident. They would smile and wave, and I would walk toward them. Just before I reached them, I would wake up, my hand on the cabin door handle, the lock turned, the door beginning to open. Every time I caught myself just in time, but each night I got a little closer to actually stepping outside. David was having similar dreams, so were the others. Whatever was out there was learning, adapting, trying to find each person's weakness. On August 3rd, we found the well open. One of the younger counselors, Sarah, discovered it during morning checks. The steel seal had been pried up, the bolts sheared clean through as if they were made of aluminum foil. The well opening was a circle of perfect darkness about 3 feet across. She did exactly what she was supposed to do. She left immediately and found Director Shoreham. By the time we arrived, the director had already cordoned off the area with caution tape. She stood at a safe distance, staring at the open well with an expression of deep concern. "Everyone stays back," she ordered. "Do not look inside. Do not listen." "Listen to what?" Jeremy asked. As if in answer, a sound drifted up from the well. Voices. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all talking at once in a low murmur like a crowd in a distant room. I could not make out words. But the cadence was wrong. Too fast in some places, too slow in others, overlapping in ways that made my head hurt. "It has been trying to open for weeks," Director Shoreham said quietly. "I have been resealing it every morning. But this time," she gestured at the sheared bolts, "this time something with real strength opened it." "What is down there?" Max asked. Questions that should not be answered. Promises that should not be kept. She turned to face us. "This changes things. If the well is open, the protections are failing. We need to end the summer early." "We still have 3 weeks left," Jeremy said. "I know, but it is not safe anymore. I will call the parents tonight. We will have the buses here by Friday to take the children home." She looked at the well again. "Until then, no one comes near this building. We cancel all activities in this area." "Understood?" We all nodded. That night, the voices were different. Instead of calling our names, they were having conversations. I could hear my mother talking to my father. David could hear his siblings arguing about something from their childhood. Tyler heard his girlfriend breaking up with him, something that had actually happened 3 months ago, word for word. The accuracy was terrifying. On August 4th, one of the kids went missing during lunch. A 10-year-old girl named Sophie simply vanished between the serving line and her table. One moment she was there, the next she was gone. No one saw her leave. It was as if she had evaporated. We searched for 6 hours. Every trail, every building, every inch of camp. Director Shoreham even authorized a search beyond the perimeter. Groups of 4 counselors, roped together, moving carefully through the unmarked woods. We found her at 6:47 p.m., just as the sun was setting. She was standing in a clearing about half a mile from camp, facing a cabin that definitely had not been on any of our maps. The cabin looked newer than the others we had seen, its wood less weathered. Smoke rose from its chimney. "Sophie," Jeremy called softly. We approached slowly, carefully. "Sophie, we need to go back to camp." She did not turn around. "They are having a party inside. They invited me. They said I could stay forever." "Who invited you, honey?" Sarah asked. "The children. There are so many children in there. They look happy." Sophie took a step toward the cabin. "I want to be happy too." I moved quickly, scooping Sophie up before she could take another step. She screamed and fought, stronger than a 10-year-old should be, but I held on. "Get us back to the trail," I shouted to Jeremy. "Now!" We ran. Sophie screamed the entire way, begging us to let her go back, promising she would just look inside, swearing the children in the cabin were her friends. Behind us, I heard the cabin door open, heard footsteps on the porch, heard voices calling Sophie's name in the tones of other children. We did not look back. We made it to the marked trail, and the moment we crossed onto it, Sophie went limp in my arms. She blinked, looked around in confusion, and started crying. "Where am I?" "I want my mom." "You are safe," I told her, even though I was not sure if that was true anymore. "We are taking you back to camp." Director Shoreham met us at the lodge entrance. She took one look at Sophie and nodded grimly. "Get her to my office." Everyone else, emergency meeting. Now. Once we were assembled and Sophie was being cared for by the nurse, the director spoke. "The buses will be here tomorrow morning instead of Friday. I have told the parents there is a gas leak, and we need to evacuate as a safety precaution. They are all en route to pick up their children. By noon tomorrow, this camp will be empty." "What about us?" David asked. "You will leave with the last bus. Your contracts are fulfilled. You will receive your full summer's pay." She paused. "I am sorry. I thought we had more time. I thought the protections would last one more season." "I was wrong. What happens to the camp?" Jeremy asked. "After we leave? I will stay. I will reseal the well. I will reinforce the boundaries as best I can. And then..." She sighed, looking older than I had ever seen her. and then I will wait for next summer and hope we can open again. This camp is the cork in the bottle. As long as Pine Haven operates, as long as we maintain the rituals and follow the rules, the things in these woods are contained. If the camp closes permanently, they will spread. How far? I asked. Far enough? That night was chaos. Kids crying because they wanted to stay. Parents calling with questions we could not answer, counselors packing in a daze. Through it all, the voices outside were louder than they had ever been. Not calling names anymore, laughing, celebrating. I was packing my duffel bag when Christopher appeared in the doorway. He had been staying in Director Shoreham's quarters, so I had not seen much of him since his incident. "Paul," he said quietly, "can I tell you something?" "Of course, buddy." The thing that pretended to be my grandmother, before I walked away, it told me something. He sat on David's empty bunk. It said the camp has been keeping them trapped for a long time. It said they used to be people, but the woods changed them. And it said that when the camp finally closes, they will remember how to be human again. They will walk right out of the forest and into towns, and nobody will know what they really are. My blood ran cold. Did it say when the camp would close? It said soon. It said the director is old and tired, and when she is gone, nobody will know how to maintain the boundaries. He looked up at me with those two aware eyes. It said thank you for feeding them. Feeding them? The children. Every summer the camp brings children, and even though the things cannot take them, they can watch them. Learn from them. Remember what it was like to be human. Christopher stood up. I think they have been waiting a long time. I think they are almost ready. Before I could respond, he left, leaving me alone with implications I did not want to consider. I found Director Shoreham in her office at 10:30 p.m. She was burning papers in a metal trash can. Decades of records turning to ash. Is it true? I asked without preamble. Are the things in the woods getting stronger by watching the campers? She did not seem surprised by the question. Where did you hear that? Christopher. He said the thing that tried to take him told him. She set down the papers she was holding. Sit. I sat. In 1947, this area was the site of a failed logging operation, she began. 23 workers came into these woods to harvest timber. After 2 weeks, only one came back. He was changed. He could barely speak, could not remember his own name, could only say that something in the woods had taken the others, that they were not dead, but they were not alive either. Transformed into something else. She stared at the burning papers. My grandmother lived in Millbrook at the time. She was what you might call a wise woman, someone who understood things beyond normal explanation. She went into the woods with 7 other people, all of them practitioners of various traditions. They found the workers, or what was left of them. They were scattered throughout the forest, their bodies warped, merged with trees and shadows, still conscious, still aware, trapped between human and something else. Jesus, I whispered. My grandmother and her companions created the boundaries. They used old rituals, older than any established religion, to contain what the woods had become. But containment requires energy, requires feeding, in a sense. Not with human lives, but with human presence, with innocence, with the energy that children naturally generate. So the camp is a ritual that repeats every summer. The children come, they play, they generate light and laughter and life. That energy strengthens the boundaries, keeps the transformed ones contained, but it also keeps them aware, keeps them close enough to humanity that they do not completely lose themselves to the forest. She looked at me directly. It is a mercy and a prison in one. And now the boundaries are failing. Everything fails eventually. The rituals degrade. The protections weaken. I have spent 32 years maintaining what my mother and grandmother built, but I am not as strong as they were. Each year the things get a little bolder. Each year more cabins appear, more wells open. One day, maybe next year, maybe in 5 years, the boundaries will fail completely. What happens then? Director Shoreham smiled sadly. I suppose we will find out. The buses arrived at 9 a.m. on August 5th. Parents came shortly after, a convoy of cars filling the dirt parking area. By 11:30 a.m., every child had been signed out and driven away. The counselors left in smaller groups, thanking Director Shoreham and promising to stay in touch. Jeremy left first, giving me a firm handshake and a warning, do not come back next year. Find a different summer job. Tyler and Max left together. David lingered, looking uncertain. Are you going to be okay here alone? He asked the director. "I have been alone before," she replied. "This is not my first time closing up after an early evacuation." By 1 p.m., it was just me and Director Shoreham. I had stayed to help with final cleanup, making sure cabins were locked, supplies were stored, equipment was secured. But really, I stayed because leaving felt wrong, like abandonment. We worked in silence for most of the afternoon. At 4:30 p.m., the director called me to her office. "You feel it, do not you?" she asked. "The pull to stay," I nodded. I had been feeling it all day, a growing reluctance to leave, a sense that I was needed here. Some people are sensitive to these woods. They can feel the boundaries, sense the things beyond them. Christopher was one. "You are another." She pulled out a folder from her desk drawer. "I have been looking for someone to train as my replacement. Someone who can learn the rituals, maintain the protections, continue the work when I am gone. You want me to run this camp? Eventually. Not next year, you're too young, you still have much to learn. But you could return next summer as head counselor. Learn from me. Understand the true purpose of what we do here." She slid the folder across the desk. "Think about it. You have my contact information. If you decide you want to help protect the world from what is in these woods, call me in the spring." I opened the folder. Inside were maps, dozens of them, showing the camp across different years. Each map had dozens of red X marks indicating cabins that had appeared and disappeared. I noticed the concentration of marks was increasing over time. What had been 3 or 4 cabins in the 1950s had become 30 or 40 in recent years. "They are pushing harder," she said, seeing what I was looking at, testing the boundaries more frequently. "Within 10 years, maybe less, there will be too many to contain. We need new solutions, new rituals, new protections. Why me? Because you followed the rules perfectly. Because when you heard the voices, you did not answer. Because when you saw Christopher being lured, you recognized the danger immediately." She stood up. "Because you stayed to help me today when you could have left with the others. That kind of dedication is rare." I closed the folder. "I need to think about it, of course. But Paul," she walked around the desk to face me directly, "whatever you decide, remember this. The things in the woods are patient. They have been trapped for 78 years and they will wait 78 more if they must. But they never forget someone who has seen them, someone who has thwarted them. You saved Christopher. You helped evacuate the children. They noticed. Are you saying I am in danger? I am saying be careful. Follow the rules even in your normal life. Do not go into woods alone. Do not answer strange calls. Do not trust voices that sound familiar but feel wrong." She placed a hand on my shoulder. "The boundaries of Pine Haven contain them physically, but their influence can reach farther. Not far, but far enough to touch someone they have marked." The sun was setting as I packed my car. Director Shoreham walked me to the parking area and we stood together in the fading light looking back at the camp. "It looks so peaceful," I said. "That is the tragedy of it. This place should be peaceful. It should be exactly what it pretends to be, a summer camp, where children make memories and learn about nature. Instead, it is a prison maintained by ritual and sacrifice. Have you ever thought about just letting them go? Maybe they would return to normal if they were free." She was quiet for a long moment. "My grandmother thought that once, when she was young and still hopeful. She weakened one small section of the boundary, just enough to let one of them through. She wanted to see if freedom would restore its humanity." Her voice dropped. It walked to Millbrook, entered a home where a family was eating dinner. It sat at their table and tried to eat with them, tried to speak with them, tried to remember how to be human. But it had forgotten too much. When it opened its mouth, only clicking sounds came out. When it tried to hold a fork, its fingers would not bend correctly. And when the family screamed and tried to run, she trailed off. My grandmother found it 3 hours later, sitting in that house surrounded by bodies, crying because it could not remember how to be the person it used to be. I felt sick. She resealed the boundary immediately, strengthened it, and she spent the rest of her life making sure it never happened again. Director Shoreham turned to me. "So no, we cannot let them go. They are not human anymore. They are echoes of humans, trapped in a transformation they can neither complete nor reverse. The kindest thing we can do is keep them contained and give them glimpses of humanity through the children who visit each summer." I got in my car. Through the windshield, I could see the woods growing darker as the sun disappeared below the horizon, and in that darkness I could see shapes moving between the trees. Too tall, too thin, watching. "Drive safely," Director Shoreham said. "And Paul, the road can be disorienting after dark. Stay on the paved road. If you see a turnoff that you do not remember from the drive-in, do not take it. If your GPS tells you to turn where there is no road, ignore it. Just keep driving until you reach Millbrook and then you will be safe. How far is Millbrook? 3 hours. You should arrive around 8 p.m. if you leave now. I started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I watched Director Shoreham walk back toward the main lodge. She looked small and alone against the massive darkness of the forest behind her. I drove. The first hour was normal. The winding road, the dense trees, the fading light, all exactly as I remembered from my arrival in May. My phone had no signal, which I expected. The clock read 5:12 p.m. The second hour was when things started to change. The road seemed longer than I remembered. More curves, more hills. The trees grew closer to the pavement, branches scraping against my car in places where I was certain there had been clearance before. I turned on my headlights as full dark settled in. At 6:47 p.m. by my car clock, I saw the first turnoff. It was a dirt road branching to the right, illuminated by my headlights. I had no memory of seeing it on the drive-in. A small wooden sign read, "Shortcut to Millbrook, 30 minutes. I kept driving straight. 5 minutes later, another turnoff. This one on the left. The sign read, "Millbrook, scenic route, 45 minutes. I gripped the steering wheel tighter and kept going straight. The turnoffs came more frequently after that. Every few minutes, another dirt road branching away from the main path, each with increasingly desperate signs. Millbrook this way, faster route, shortcut, trust us. I ignored them all, keeping my eyes fixed on the paved road ahead. At 7:23 p.m., my headlights illuminated a figure standing on the road about 50 yards ahead. I slowed, my heart hammering. It looked like Jeremy. Same build, same clothes he had been wearing when he left camp that morning. He stood in the middle of the road, waving his arms as if flagging me down. I accelerated. As I got closer, the figure remained perfectly still despite the arm-waving motion, as if it were a mannequin being moved by invisible strings. At the last second, I swerved around it. In my peripheral vision, I saw its head turn to follow my car, turn farther than any human neck could turn, rotating a full 180 degrees. I did not slow down. More figures appeared. Tyler, Max, David, Sarah, other counselors whose names I never learned, all standing on or near the road, all trying to flag me down. I drove past them all, my speedometer pushing 60 on a road that was barely safe at 30. At 7:52 p.m., I saw lights ahead. Real lights, street lights, and beyond them, the scattered buildings of Millbrook. I crossed an invisible threshold and everything changed. My phone suddenly showed full signal. The clock jumped ahead to 8:01 p.m. 9 minutes had passed in an instant. Behind me, the road looked normal again, just a typical forest highway in the dark. I pulled into the parking lot of a small diner and sat there, shaking, for 15 minutes before I could trust my legs to carry me inside. The diner was nearly empty. An older waitress with kind eyes took one look at me and said, "You came from the camp." It was not a question. I nodded. "Sit anywhere, honey. I will get you some coffee." The coffee was strong and hot and exactly what I needed. The waitress returned with a slice of pie I had not ordered. "On the house. You look like you need it." She sat down across from me. "I am Helen. I have lived in Millbrook my whole life. 63 years. I know about the camp. How much do you know?" "Enough." She glanced toward the window, toward the dark woods visible in the distance. My grandmother was one of the people who helped create the boundaries back in '47. She told me stories before she died. Warned me never to go into those woods, never to trust anything that came out of them. But the camp is necessary. We understand that. Every spring, we watch the counselors drive through town toward Pine Haven. Every summer, we see the buses bring the children. And every August, we count how many leave versus how many arrived. She sipped her own coffee. Some years, everyone comes back. Some years are worse than others. "This year, everyone came back," I said. "I know. We heard they closed early." That is usually a bad sign. Means the boundaries are weaker than expected. Helen looked at me directly. "Are you going back next year?" "I do not know. The director offered me a position. Training to eventually take over. And you are considering it." Another statement, not a question. "Let me tell you something, Paul. And do not ask me how I know your name, I just do. That camp needs people who care. Needs people willing to sacrifice normal lives to keep those things contained. My grandmother did it. Margaret Shoreham does it. But it is a hard life. Lonely. You will watch people age normally while you stay connected to that place, and that connection changes you. My grandmother lived to be 97, but the last 30 years of her life she barely slept. Said she could feel the boundaries weakening. Said she could hear the woods calling even from here. That sounds terrifying. It is, but it is also important. She stood up. Think carefully before you decide. And if you do go back, be more careful than Margaret is being. Those things are getting stronger, and they are getting smarter. They need new strategies to keep them contained, not just the old rituals repeated until they stop working. I finished my pie and coffee, paid, and drove the remaining hour to Portland in silence. My apartment felt surreal after 2.5 months in the woods. Too clean, too modern, too disconnected from anything real. That night, I dreamed I was back at Camp Pinehaven. But it was empty. No children, no counselors, no Director Shoreham. Just me in the woods. I walked to the perimeter, to the line of orange stakes, and looked into the trees. They were full of figures. Hundreds of them, thousands, all standing perfectly still watching me waiting. One of them stepped forward. It looked almost human, but the proportions were wrong in ways I could not quite define. When it spoke, its voice was a chorus of everyone I had ever heard at camp. The kids, the counselors, even my own voice mixed in. "You will come back," it said. "You are connected now. We are in your dreams, in your memories, in every moment you spent in our woods. You will come back, Paul. And when you do, we will be ready." I woke up at 3 a.m. sweating and certain I had heard something outside my apartment window, but I lived on the 4th floor. There was nothing out there except empty air and streetlights below. I checked my phone. One email received at 2:47 a.m., the exact time I had arrived at camp back in May. The sender was Director Shoreham. The subject line read, "Think about it." The email contained only one attachment, a photograph taken from what looked like the main lodge, showing the view toward the forest at sunset. But when I zoomed in on the tree line, I could see them. Dozens of figures standing just inside the woods. Watching the camera, watching me under the photo. A single sentence. "They are waiting for your answer." It is now October 20th. I have been back in my normal life for 2.5 months. I work at a coffee shop. I attend community college classes. I see friends. I do laundry and pay bills and live like a regular 21-year-old. But I cannot stop thinking about Camp Pinehaven. I follow the rules Director Shoreham taught me. I never go hiking alone. I do not answer my phone if the number looks unfamiliar. When I hear my name called in public, I always look to see who is calling before I respond. And every night, without fail, I dream about the woods. The dreams are getting more detailed. I can smell the pine needles now, feel the temperature changes, hear specific sounds, the creak of cabin doors, the splash of children in the lake, the murmur of voices after 11 p.m. Last week I woke up standing at my apartment door with my hand on the lock. I have no memory of getting out of bed. 3 days ago I found an orange stake in my car. I have no idea how it got there. It looks exactly like the perimeter stakes from camp, even has the same faded paint. Yesterday I saw Christopher. He was standing across the street from the coffee shop where I work, just watching through the window. When I waved, he smiled and waved back. Then he turned and walked away. I ran outside to catch him, but he had vanished into a crowd that was not large enough to hide a 10-year-old boy. I called Director Shoreham that evening. "Paul," she said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. "I hoped you would call. Christopher was here, in Portland." "How is that possible?" "It is not. Christopher is home in California with his parents. I spoke to his mother last week." A pause. "What you saw was not Christopher. Then what was it?" "A reminder. They are showing you that they can reach beyond the boundaries, at least in small ways. They are showing you what they learned from him. What they learned from all the children." She sighed. "They want you back at camp, Paul. They are curious about you. You thwarted them, saved children from them, and they respect that in their own twisted way. They want to test you further. That is insane. Yes. But it is also true. You have 3 choices. Ignore them and hope they eventually lose interest, though I warn you they are patient beyond measure. Or you can come back next summer and face them directly under the protection of the camp's boundaries and rituals. Or She paused. You can try to run far enough away that their influence cannot reach you, though I'm not sure anywhere is far enough anymore. What would you do? I asked. I would come back. I would learn everything I could about maintaining the boundaries, about keeping them contained. And then I would work to make those boundaries stronger so that future generations do not have to live with the fear we live with. Her voice softened. But I am old, Paul, and I have given my life to this work. You are young. You deserve to have choices I never had. Did you have a choice when you took over from your mother? No, she admitted. I was raised knowing this would be my responsibility. I never had the luxury of walking away. But you do. Use that luxury if you can. We talked for another hour. She told me more about the history of Pinehaven, about the rituals that maintained the boundaries, about the slow degradation of the protections over decades. She told me about the people who had tried to close the camp, convinced they were keeping children safe, only to watch those woods spawn horrors that spread for miles before they were contained again at great cost. Before we hung up, she said, the spring registration starts in January. If you decide to return, I will hold the head counselor position for you. If not, I will find someone else. But Paul, whoever comes back, whatever we do next summer, I think it might be our last season. The boundaries are failing faster than I can repair them. We need new solutions, new ideas. We need people who are willing to think beyond the old methods. No pressure, I said, trying to joke. All the pressure in the world, she replied seriously. Because if Pinehaven fails, if those things escape containment, they will spread. Slowly at first. A few strange disappearances in Millbrook. Then more in the neighboring towns. Within a decade, the entire Cascade Range could be transformed, and we have no way to stop that from happening beyond keeping the camp operational. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment for hours, staring at nothing. I am writing this now as a record, as a warning, as an attempt to make sense of everything I experienced. If you are reading this, you might be considering a job at a summer camp. Maybe you saw an advertisement for Camp Pinehaven, offering wages 3 times the normal rate. Maybe you received a personal invitation from Director Shoreham. If so, I want you to understand what you are getting into. Camp Pinehaven is real. The rules are real. The things in the woods are real. You will meet children who will trust you to keep them safe from dangers they cannot see. You will make friends with other counselors who understand what you are facing. You will learn that the world contains mysteries that rational thought cannot explain, and that some of those mysteries require constant vigilance to contain. You will also lie awake at night listening to voices that know exactly what to say to make you open your door. You will see things between the trees that should not exist. You will make decisions that determine whether children live normal lives or become haunted by things they can never unsee. It's the hardest job I have ever had. It is also the most important. I have not decided yet if I am going back. I have until January to choose. Part of me wants to run as far from those woods as possible and never look back. But another part, the part that saved Christopher, that helped evacuate 43 children safely, that spent a summer learning that monsters are real and so are the people who fight them, that part knows I am already connected, already changed. The orange steak in my car is still there. I should throw it away. I should forget about Camp Pinehaven and move on with my life. Instead, I keep it on my passenger seat. A reminder, a talisman, a promise that I have not yet decided whether to keep. The dreams continue. Last night I dreamed I was standing at the well behind the recreation hall. The seal was open. I could hear the voices down below clearer than before. They were not threatening. They were pleading. Help us remember, they said. Help us be human again. I do not know if they can be helped. I do not know if they should be helped. I do not know if keeping them contained is mercy or cruelty, but I know someone has to try to answer those questions. Maybe it will be me. Maybe it will be you. If you see an advertisement for Camp Pinehaven next spring, if you receive an invitation to work a summer in the Cascade Range, if someone tells you about a camp with strange rules and pay too good to be true, think carefully before you accept. Then think about what happens if nobody accepts. The woods are patient. The things trapped inside them are patient. They have waited 78 years. They can wait 78 more, but the boundaries are weakening. The rituals are failing. The old solutions are running out of time. Someone needs to find new answers before it is too late. I hope it is not me. but I think it might be. I will let you know next summer, if I am still here to tell you.